Shalom, shalom. It's your brother Malcolm, giving all praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh Bashem Shai, Bahashem Rakakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS, who are the true leaders of all Israel on earth today. Salutations to my fellow Akim who are doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so. And to the confusion of faith brothers who are joined unto our ranks, and to the few Akwaf that are listening and learning, the hopeful elect. To you I say shalom. It's going to be a quick lesson. I picked up a book, the Negro Question Part 4, The Missing Link, that was written by Lee Cummings and a local scholar here from Chicago. I'm just going to read some of the information that he collected up. And but before I do that, it's just like I just want to acknowledge how the truth is coming out. I watched the video with my brother, the mighty Kazak, Shalom Makia. He went into the book. He went into the copy from 1821. It looked like I read on the book there of the New Testament in Hebrew, and you have to come to the understanding that the New Testament was actually written in Hebrew first, just like the Old Testament. Then it was translated to the Greek. So basically, he went into it to prove that in the Hebrew that the mark of the beast is the mark of the beast. Is talking about incision and something inserted under your skin. Prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. So it pretty much tells you that in the Hebrew and in the Greek. And the video is it's you got to see the video. But what inspired me to do it is how we keep reproving all these people who try to come against the prophecies. All right, and then you have these clowns out here who dare to fix their lips to say that the curses in Deuteronomy is not prophetic. People are amazing, man. So without any further ado, I'm gonna read a couple scriptures. I'm gonna start off with a scripture, then I'm gonna read some information from this book, which I'm gonna do a follow-up video to it to show the images. All right, I just wasn't prepared today to do that portion, but what I am gonna do is edify and pique interest to anyone who's really trying to learn. Okay, so this is 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter, the 27th verse. And the 28th verse. And it reads, "For evil shall be put out, and deceit shall be quenched. And as for faith, it shall flourish. Corruption shall be overcome. And the truth which have been so long without fruit shall be declared." And this is why Esau the heathen, and even the 2/3 are so butthurt, man. Because you got the 2/3 of our people who are just in love with their master, with the enemy, man. But I'm starting off on page 42 in the Negro Question 4, The Missing Link by Lee Cummings, and this is page 42, and it's got image here too. You know, you could tell this is written in that old English, and it's talking about the Irish Rebellion of 1641, an Ireland library, and you have to. So this is in the library in Ireland. A lot of this information, Lee Cummings gives you the places where this information is and where these relics actually are. So it goes. This book is a beautiful book because it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the so-called white man knows this history and what we say is true about Negroes ruling during the Dark Ages. All right, and this is also why people like Oliver Cromwell came back with such violence, because the so-called Negroes who were the southern kingdom, Salakia, the southern kingdom of Israel, made up of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, drove the so-called white man into the Caucasus Mountains after the fall of Rome. All right, and that's where you got your cave dwelling, your cave. That was their caveman time, not 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago. It was barely over 1,000 years ago they went in caves, man. So when they came back into power, when they started coming down and intermingling and marrying, marrying into the royal families of Europe, there was a lot of things happening. You got to remember, you had the colonies had been set up over here in America. All right, and the terminology white hat wasn't used yet, because this is 1641 when I'm about to read, so it wasn't until another 40 years later, because in 1681, all right, is actually when they wrote into law and actually classified themselves as white people. All right, you can check the research of Dr. Jacqueline Badalora to get that history, and the research of Dr. Robin D'Angelo. Yeah, Dr. Robin D'Angelo and Dr. Jacqueline Badalora. You know, these you can read their books and their research to prove our points. Okay? But let's get on with this. This is describes that at 1 a.m. seven Papists, Pope's servants, all right, broke into Mr. Atkins' house, beat his brains out, then raped his wife, who was pregnant with child. And it states that after they raped her, they took the unborn child, sacrificed it in the fire. And in the other scenes from this horrific event, you can see the English drowning black Irish children in rivers. It would be cruel and inhumane that after these people suffered such shame, death, and humiliation, that their story should go untold, that history should remain ignorant of their former existence. And they do, because this is, you know, because you just had St. Patrick's Day and how these Edomites walking around drunk and red-faced with green on as if they are the Irish, and they're not. And a lot of them know it. A lot of them are aware of this history. All right. In the 17th century, this is chapter 4, Oliver Cromwell in Britain, Wales. In the 17th century, 500,000 Huguenots have been deported from France and were given asylum in Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and the Electorate Palatine by King Charles II. The French were originally a black nation, but after the white English had taken over the country, they had deported or forced black Frenchmen to leave. History states that while they slept, ships were waiting in the harbor to take them to Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and Palatinate Electorate. Why I am mentioning these people because they jumped off the frying pan right into the fire. Once they got off those ships, they were sold into the American colonies. All right. These were people who Boyd Bolkins described as being Basque, small, long-headed, dark man who inhabited all of Europe before the arrival of the English. And remind you, Boyd Dawkins was a white scholar, okay, anthropologist, if you will, and a historian. And this is what he had written down. You know, the captives from Wales were Huguenots, ended up in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Idaho, Tennessee, Ohio, Rhode Island, and the slave plantations of American South. This is a matter of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. No, this was prophecy. The prophecy clearly said, man, in Deuteronomy that they would be sold into slavery. All right. And quite frankly, the first slaves that came to America, the first Negro slaves, came from Europe. They didn't even come from Africa. The first slaves that came to America were the Spanish and the Portuguese. The Moors, all right, at the fall of Spain, all right, in 1492, the same year that Christopher Columbus sold. All right, those Moors, a lot of those Moors were put on slave ships, man, and sold, man. All right, at that time, because at that time the so-called white man was becoming back fully into power. All right, and the first places that they got back of Europe was Spain and Portugal, and then they started to slowly take it all back until now they call themselves the royals. All right, because they were intermingling and marrying into the royal families until they got rid of them all, lightened everyone up, and then they kept the names of those royal families, and now you have those incestuous, funny-looking people that refer to themselves as the royals today. Fact. Okay. It says, think of this for a moment. When the slaves left London's market, it already was loaded with captives The ships were made it to West Africa and stopped in Judah's slave coast and picked up more captives. Once the slave ships left the coast, and that's how and that's the way that they did business, and they still do to this day, man. A truck will be half loaded, or and it will pick up until it's fully loaded, and then it will go and drop off a load and pick up more loads. You rarely see trucks empty for long. Normally, when a truck or when a freight truck stops off in a location, it drops a load and then it's loaded up again before it goes all the way back. It's rare that you see trucks driving across the country empty. That's not profitable. All right. So it said it stopped in Judah's slave coast and picked up more captives. Once the slave ships left the west coast of Africa, she continued to the Middle Passage, and from there she proceeded to the Americas. These slave ships carrying two different groups of blacks. One group of captives from Ireland, Britain, Wales, Scotland, and France. The other group from West Africa. This is not conjecture or some writer trying to make a name for himself. These are facts. These three kingdoms were plucked up by the roots and replanted in the Americas. And the truth be said, they were the same people. Let's skip over a couple pages. I'm gonna come back to this, and I'm gonna show you these maps. I'm gonna show you this in the when I go back to do the next part of this, because this is actually part 2 to another video. So the next one will actually be part 3. All right. I believe the first one was called the Scots and the Irish, or the Irish and the Scots were Israelites, were Negroes, or something to that effect. Because that video got a lot of scoffers on it and angry so-called white people who don't want to acknowledge this history. Or some of them know it, some of them don't. All right. But this is I'm looking at a map on the west coast of Africa called Negro land, and it's got Judah and Levites written right into it. You had a Fort Judah, a Fort Levi, and a Fort Benjamin. And it said this map was created by the royal map maker Emmanuel Bowen. And so I'm giving you the information. Anyone can go look this up. The map was created by the royal map maker Emmanuel Bowen in 1747 for two European kings, George II of England, King Louis the 15th of France. When he got back to Europe, he told the two kings the tribe of Levi was the Asante, and at that the slave coast was the kingdom of Judah. This map is currently in the inventory of Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. All right, school I actually got accepted to. All right, but I went to the Marine Corps instead. This is a book that was published by Louisiana State University called Creole New Orleans Race and Americanization. Page 67. It states that 6 slave ships came from Judah, dropping the slaves at the mouth of the Mississippi. On page 69, it says 1 ship came from Judah and dropped off 464 slaves. And they're giving you and showing you the maps and the information. All right. So that was just, the introduction. In part 3, I will show these images in this book, and go a little bit more into detail about the whole thing. And I'm going to read a couple more scriptures. This is actually, I'm just going to read this one. This is Revelation 13 and 9 and 10. And it reads, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. And he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is his patience and the faith of the saints. Okay? So, the saints were taken into captivity, clearly. Where is the record of that happening? Deuteronomy 28th chapter. All right, with the yokes of iron. The brother just did an excellent video on the yokes of iron. Okay? When you do the history on the yokes of iron, you find that, there's only one people that can fit that event happening, which was chronicled in the Bible as a prophecy, a future prophecy. All right? There are no relics of the Jewish people going into slave ships with yokes of irons around the neck and being sold to the four corners and scattered to the four corners of the earth. It did not happen. Not to them. All right. Then it says, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Funny thing is that when you check history and you check scripture, Esau blessing was the sword. When you check scripture and when you check history, when you go to Joel, you find that the Hebrews were sold to Arabs, was sold to Africans, Edomites, and Ishmaelites. And when you do the history on the slave trade, those were the three businessmen, so to speak, or groups of people that were doing business. So, once again, where is the history of Arabs selling Edomite slaves to Hamites, to Africans, and Africans selling them back to other white people? Crickets. I wish I had a cricket sound effect to put in that little time of space there. Okay? And it says, and here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So the saints are patiently waiting to put into slavery those that sold them into slavery. So with that, I hope this was a edifying lesson. All praises, glory, and honor be unto Yahweh Bashem Now Shai and Abba Babal.